Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this weekly Hebrew word study. We are in 1 Samuel chapter 19, and last week we left off with an incredible scenario that was being set up where David was let out the window by his wife Michal, and she took an idol, a teraphim, and put it in his bed. Somehow got some goat's hair and made a little form under the covers that made it look like he was sick. And Saul's messengers, which of course Saul was her dad, came to get David, and this whole thing is being set up here as she's trying to cover for him. So we pick up with that suspenseful thought with verse 14 here, and we see some really interesting words, vayishlach, which is the word shalach, to send, Shaul, and then we see a word malachim, which is the word for messenger. When you study biblical Hebrew, the first thing you'll notice is that, in English, we translate and have a word called angel. But in the Hebrew, there is no word for angel. There's only a word malachim or malacha, if it's singular or plural, for someone who is sent. And the implication there, of course, is when there are messengers sent by God, the translators will translate them as an angel. But I just wanted to point that out to you, that as we unpack this word and open it, we just see that it is a messenger. It's a malach. And so it's often translated as ambassador. Majority of angels, 101 times. So it's kind of interesting to realize that there are words that we have in English that have been, we'll say, assigned by the translators, by religious customs, and through tradition, it was probably a better word, to give an understanding of these messengers sent from God, but the Hebrew does not have a special word for it. So we see there are messengers sent from Saul to get David. They come knocking on the door, and Michal tries to continue to cover for David and say, oh, he's sick. And so, they go home, they go back to Saul and say, oh, we can't bring him, he's sick. You don't know how much time takes place here. They obviously didn't come in the house the first time, but Michal is ready for them because she's got this whole charade set up where she's got his bed stuffed with a mannequin, a teraphim, and some fake hair, and she's going to try to pull a fast one on her dad and these messengers who are soldiers. She was a brave lady. I don't know that she really thought she could get away with this. Did she really think her dad would respect that David's sick and that no one would look underneath the covers? Hard to imagine that in some way. So verse 15, Saul says, you can almost see him pounding his fist on his throne and saying, I don't care if he's sick, go to grab him. It's kind of interesting. We get to the words as ha'alu oto, bring him up. And I don't care if you bring him in his bed, bamichat, bamicha, his bed, Eli lahamito, and that I may kill him, cause his death. It's not the word like for kill or murder. It's more of that I may cause him to die. It's the word for mut, which is the word for death. And so again, knock on Michal's door, vayavo, these messengers, hamalachim, vehine. It's kind of interesting. Vihine is one of a precious word to me. Hine, it means here I am. It always has a special meaning to it. And so these messengers burst in. There they were. They rip off the covers, and there is this teraphim, this image, suspiciously much like an idol, and it's in the bed, and it's got a cover of goat's hair for its head. It makes me think of, what's that saying, when your picture looks like your photo and your passport, you know, your vacation's lasted long enough and it's time to go home. It's kind of this, you know, that did she ever expect him to look this bad? You know, that's when someone was sick, he must have uh, looked so bad compared to what this image is in the bed. So what she was trying to do, I don't know. Obviously, she had noble intentions, but they quickly found out that this wasn't David. And obviously between verse 16 and verse 17, they seem to grab Michal by the arms and drag her to her dad. And of course, dad is not happy. He says to her, and you probably see him in your mind pounding his fist on his throne, saying, "Why are you treating me like this?" And then the word for deceived here is kind of interesting. It's signified by the Hebrew um, designation of H7411. And of course, what's interesting here is you would expect this to be a very intensive situation. A lot of strong emotions. Saul wants to kill her husband, his son-in-law, you know, somebody's going to die, somebody's going to get hurt. And so there's a lot of emotion flowing here. And that is somewhat unpacked in this word being in a PL form. And I know that again, the PL, depending upon what classes you go to and what your teachers tell you. Some will tell you that PL is a very intense form, as outlined just by the nature of the verb attribute that it's spoken about. Others will say, no, you really have to gain context. You know, that's the context of the sentence that really sets the emotion, that really tells you if it's a perfect, which being a completed action, or an imperfect, whether it's a uncompleted action. But here, this word is parsed as a verb PL perfect. And so he's obviously mad. You got to know there's a lot of emotion, a lot of fury going on here. And so let's just assign it a PL. It's got all the right markings on it. And that adds just to the intensity. But what I found interesting is when we open this word up, it comes from a root. Every Hebrew word either comes from a most traditionally a three consonantal root or a trilateral root. There are a few that have two, and there are a couple that have four, but most of them all come from three letters. And so that's gives us an indication of where this word came from. So here we see this is the H, Mem, and Hey, and it has the vowel pointing of Rama, and it comes from a ancient word from the Aramaic, which means to cast or shoot. Well, it's kind of fun. This is where Hebrew is so incredible to how can we get the idea of casting or shooting into what happened here with this deceit. And of course, Brown's Driver Briggs, which is one of the most basic commentaries to start with, they will say that this PL form takes you into a meaning of deal treacherously with, which I guess you could and beguile, you know, that an archer, when they shoot something, you usually, you know, you may not know it's coming. It may be a surprise attack. It may be cast at you, or arrows would be shot or thrown at you, and you can't see where they're coming from. And so you get the intention here that this is a very treacherous thing, that arrows are coming at you. And so in the ancient mind, you can see how they could connect that together, being a very intense form. But what I also found interesting is that as David left and ran from this area where Saul was, and this was where we'll pick up next week, but I wanted to show you that in verse 18, it shows that David fled to Ramah. It's the same root letters of the Resh, Mem, and Hey. It's spoken of as having somewhat of a different root, but again, this is just the translators. These are the people who wrote the lexicons and the dictionaries. I don't think it's any accident that these are somewhat connected. And I think that's a beautiful thing here in the Hebrew to see word plays. And we sometimes like to see word plays. I mean, we like them in English, and they are words that rhyme. They are words that have similar ending. They flow in a poetic device. Hebrew is not a scientific language. It is a relationship. It is a poetic language in many cases. And so you will see word plays and um, phrasing and rhyming going on here. And so next week when we come back and pick up on verse 18, we're going to look and just see if we can find any connection between this rimitini of the deceiving here and the Rama of the place where David went and what he was doing there. And so, of course, Saul is chastising his daughter. You helped my enemy. And Michal goes into defense mode here and said, whoa, whoa, he said to me, let me go. And why should I kill you? So I did it to spare my life. So again, you see that's quite common throughout the scriptures here, throughout the Bible, of people telling a lie to save their life. Abraham did it. Isaac did it. Jacob was involved in some things like that of lying. And here we see Michal lying to save her life and to protect herself from her father Saul. So again, very interesting thoughts. The Bible is very plain. It lays it all out there and allows us to prayerfully and uh, discern this and go through it and analyze it and take it to heart. So we're going to leave off with verse 17. Again, a very tense situation, and we're going to see that things change as we get into verse 18 next week. So I hope you enjoy this Hebrew study. Again, I want it to be a blessing to you. I wanted to motivate you. I just want to show you and somehow connect you with the great passion that I feel for the Hebrew and Aramaic language, and truly believe it is a language straight from God's heart, given to us to be able to get to know Him more and fall deeper and deeper in love with this great God who has left us this wonderful, wonderful word. So God bless you, and I pray that you have a wonderful day and the rest of your week, and see you next week. Bye-bye.